Hi, everyone. Nate here. Just a quick heads up that if you enjoy What a Hell of a Way to Die, you can access bonus content in which we publish a new episode every week on our Patreon. The link is in the show notes, and for $5 a month, you get access to all the bonus content we've put out since we started the show back in 2016. Hope you enjoy, and thanks for listening.
Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. He ain't gonna jump no more.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of What a Hell of a Way to Die. You got me and you got Nate. Nate, how things doing? How does your garden grow today?
Actually, pretty well. Believe it or not, the pellets have worked really well. We've had a lot of sunlight, warm weather. We're going to have some really warm weather in the coming week. But the pellets really got rid of those fuckers. And the basil that was previously kind of destroyed has not only recovered, but recovered massively to the point where it's like comically large leaves and doing really well. And then the one that was recently damaged that had been like the better performer previously, putting the plastic, vented plastic covers on it has helped a lot to get it to recover. It seems pretty healthy now. And so realistically speaking, I'm hoping that with, the next 2 weeks, with it being warm and sunny and the pellets working, it'll also be big. I also bought, so previously they sell, you can buy like for grocery delivery here, you can buy like live herbs that, come in like planting trays. And I previously tried to keep one alive and it died immediately. So I got some other ones the other day and I just immediately planted them as soon as I got them. So I got, the one that died was a cilantro plant, but I got chives and Italian flat parsley and I planted them immediately, and they've done well enough to like hold on that I was able to harvest them for 2 different recipes I used this week, and it looks like they're actually going to do okay, it seems. So apparently the lesson is always plant them immediately. And also my peppers, I finally cleared out some space in the back and I was like, fuck it, rather than like force them to suffer through being indoors forever until next year, I just probably the sunniest spot of the whole back garden, I cleared all the weeds and shit, and cleared through the soil and whatnot, and then planted these 5 seedlings that I have. So we will see how well they do. I don't know. If I get one single pepper this season, I'll be happy. But those are plants germinated from seeds from peppers that I bought from the grocery store. So that's pretty cool in its own right that I've managed to get them this far. And the snail pellets are working overtime out there too, because it's kept those fuckers away, which I appreciate. How's your garden?
It's basically stealing, using peppers.
I know
using
Monsanto is gonna fucking challenge me in court for this shit. Yeah, because I got them from the goddamn grocery store. But yeah, how's your garden, man?
Yeah, it's going well. The tomatoes and cucumbers both went absolutely bananas, and I feel like they're competing at this point, and I think maybe the tomatoes are winning, but also it could just be that I need to be better at watering, because when it rains, this raised bed is underneath. It's like right up against the wall of the garage. So it's, the cucumbers grow like underneath a kind of, it's not really an awning, but, there's just like a lip up there of a good like, foot, maybe 15 inches. So it doesn't get as much water. So the cucumbers, I've gotten a couple of cucumbers, and I've canned, 1 mason jar worth of cherry tomatoes so far. But we have basil. We have basil going so crazy that I'm just adding it into every recipe now. Like fried tofu. I don't know, chop up a bunch of basil and throw it in there. Making what did I make yesterday? I harvested one of my eggplants and fried little eggplant fingers, and fuck it, throw basil in there. I got nothing but basil. I got a lot of lemon sage and everything. So I'm basically just this is what we cook with now until it's gone, because otherwise it's a complete waste of time and money. So
yeah, I'm pretty stoked about the big ass basil plants, because I do need to trim them so they can continue to grow, but like I definitely think that for all the suffering and annoyance of it, I will get a bomb ass batch of pesto before this is all said and done.
And I'll tell you, Nate, I learned this from somebody. If your basil does start to go to bolt, the tops, when you pop those off, cook with them, because apparently they have more flavor. They have more flavonoids or whatever it is that gives you the flavor than the actual leaves. So and obviously you want to get to them before they start bolting, because when they bolt, that means the plant is going to seed and the leaves are all going to, shrivel up and die because you're going to use them for energy. But if you get those, start popping them off and just like saute it with whatever else you're cooking. And it turns out really well. You get a nice little basil boost or sage boost. Anything that any of your herbs that bolt like that seems to be pretty great when you cook with those little top bits. So I did that.
Oh yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, I did that with I grow dill specifically to just use it in my own dips, and dill gets these yellow flowers, and it's like, fuck it, chop it all up, throw it all in there. It's all edible. I'm learning so much about like what is and isn't edible, and there's just an insane amount of things. It's like, yeah, that decorative plant, yeah, it turns out you can just eat the leaves. There's a purslane plants that my wife got that are just like hanging baskets. They're yellow, they're pretty, but also all the tiny leaves are basically like eating tiny spinaches. So if you go out, and my wife's like, next year we're just going to grow a whole bed of them because they're great for pollinators, but also you can eat most of it. So
yeah, I don't know about going that far in this first year of growing, but I will say that the dill thing sounds like a good idea, because invariably when I buy dill, it feels like such a waste because you get so much of it and like you don't use all of it in a recipe. And unless you're going full Eastern European, you're not going to use that much dill in a week. So being able to grow my own sounds like it would make a lot of sense, because there's this, I can't pronounce it, so I won't even try, but there's a Greek lemon soup basically you make with, it's like a chicken soup with rice, but you thicken it up and it feels like you've put cream into it, but you haven't. You actually just beat eggs, and I think it's eggs and lemon juice, and then you slowly add hot chicken stock into the egg and lemon juice mixture as you're like aggressively stirring it. And that causes it to cook the egg, like thicken it, but like if it's done correctly, it's not clumps. It's like, it basically just becomes what looks like a pot of heavy cream. And that causes the soup to kind of like thicken up with egg. And it's incredible, but dill is a crucial component to it. And invariably, especially back in New York, I remember I'd buy a bunch of dill in the grocery store, and it would just be like, I don't need this comically overstuffed pillow full of dill for one recipe. But you can't buy it, you only buy it in bundles. So my goal is to grow some of my own. But I think the big long-term goal was always basil, because that goes out of the supermarket. Like it runs out pretty regularly. And I definitely feel like I would like to be able to make like risotto and pesto and marinara sauce and stuff like that requires basil. So
yeah, and it's no good using dried stuff. Using dried basil.
Oh yeah, dried stuff sucks. Don't get me wrong. Like especially dried basil. Dried basil to me tastes almost indistinguishable from dried parsley.
Yeah, there's no that once you hit it in a dry, and I've been doing that with dill when I make my dips. The recipe I was following is like, it said to dry it in a microwave. And yesterday I said that doesn't make any sense. Why am I drying out any of the dill juices out of this thing? Like, I like the taste of dill. Why am I not putting as much of it into this dip as I can? And it's very simple. Like, it's a cup of mayonnaise, a cup of sour cream, and then a bunch of dill, and I've got some minced onion. I have a dehydrator now, so that's all I do is I suck the moisture out of things and then eat it, and some garlic powder. And it's too easy, just throw it all together, and you got a nice dip. So, and I think what we're gonna do, my plan this week is to start dill in my hydroponics, so I can have dill all year long. Because that's all I want, is I just want to be able to make dips forever without having to pay like $7 for a dip mix full of a bunch of shit I don't want.
Yeah, that makes sense. The same way that, I would love to make my own garlic powder, because I'm sure it would taste amazing. But obviously there's sometimes when it's like, would it be worth that much effort? Because I don't necessarily know if homemade garlic powder would taste better. Whereas, like, for example, if I grew my own peppers, being able to dry out peppers and then use them later for recipes would be incredible. Like, that to me would be 100% worth the work. But, there's another thing that we talk about on this show besides home gardening, and that is garbage with the military. And specifically, thanks to the reporting of a friend of the show, Jordan Uhl, and Ken Klippenstein, we have learned about the military recruiting via Twitch, basically gaming recruiters, trying to recruit gamers into the infantry. And as such, because of this story and this reporting, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has introduced a pair of amendments to a defense appropriations bill that would bar the military from using funding to maintain recruiting presences in U.S. schools or on digital streaming platforms such as Twitch. I didn't know the military had permanent presences in high schools. Yikes.
Yeah, so you and I think, are going to be a little different. I went to a Catholic high school where the military is just not allowed in. When I joined, I had to find a recruiter, and like at one point, my recruiter was going to come to my high school, and when I told him I went to a Jesuit high school, he's like, "Oh yeah, I can't actually go there. It's like I can't step foot on the campus there. You have to come to me." Because Catholic, I guess St. Louis Archdiocese is like, no, none of our onward Christian soldiers will be onward Christian soldiers. So I had to find my guy. But yeah, like apparently people would tell me that they would just like post up in the cafeteria during lunch, and that's just like, I can't imagine like something I want less than to talk to a recruiter while I'm eating lunch at the age of 17 in high school. Like that's a weird.
Yes.
Nate,
so
when you think Nate,
my high school, they would do that. They would periodically be around. They'd have a table. You could come talk to them. They wouldn't really come up and talk to you. They'd just be there for you to talk to them if you wanted to. My ROTC detachment had people that did recruiting in schools near Bloomington as well. And there, the Bloomington North was pretty, like, Bloomington as a whole is a pretty left-leaning town, which is a rarity in Indiana. And so at Bloomington North, the recruiters weren't allowed to wear uniforms, and there was like a school counselor there the whole time. But at Carmel High School, where I went, they'd be in their dress uniforms, or they'd be in. It's weird. I recall, this is so long ago. It was pre 9/11. They weren't in fatigues. They were always in their dress uniforms. But there would be like, it wasn't a constant presence, but they would be there periodically. I just remember seeing the Air Force, Marines, Army guys, etc. But this was like 1999, 2000 that I can remember this happening. So it's just like, it feels. I mean, I have no idea what it's like now. I remember people from ROTC doing a hometown recruiting thing at Carmel, and I think they went in ACUs because that was the uniform.
Recruiting is so weird, compared just like the way that they want to get you, like the Twitch thing and the Discord server. So if you guys don't know, the military has an esports team, which is like just the absolute dream, is to be on an esports team and also still make your fucking military pay. But they would have these streamings, and it's kind of like what you're describing, where it's like they're not there to be in your face, but they are there. It's like, oh, we're just here if you have any questions. The problem is that the internet is full of shitheads. And while I am one of them, this was one of those, like, I want to just watch this. I don't want to actually participate. So when I found the Discord server that the Army recruiting had set up, I jumped into it. And God, the night that I was there watching it, because everybody just comes in and asks about like war crimes and Pat Tillman and Haditha and just all these insane, just basically just constantly owning them over war crimes. And you would see a post, and then 15 seconds later it'd be gone as people were banned. Like the military, whoever was running that Discord server was being fucking quick. Just like, you talk some shit, you're out. You talk some shit, you're out. Which doesn't, Nate, from a PAO standpoint, that doesn't work. Like, that's not, you're not actually, like, nobody is like, damn it, they banned me. They must, win this round. There's nothing to, you're literally just making yourself look worse, which, as we see, because they got owned so hard that they stopped doing it. Like, even before AOC is putting this in about not using funds to recruit online and on Twitch, they had already pulled their Twitch channel, and they had already stopped doing this because they couldn't get shitheads to stop coming in and asking them about war crimes, which is hilarious. You should always do that. Always do that, because it flusters, recruiters, and it's funny. I mean, it's
also
not
because
funny
a
that
lot of the recruiting dynamic is, a one-on-one thing or multiple NCOs talking to you, the potential recruit. So putting them in a situation where they have what you might describe as, a sort of reversal of the situation in which there's lots of haters. Basically, there's lots of anti-military folks on their channel who can talk to each other and see stuff that other people say. I definitely think that it's a lot. It puts them on the back foot. And I mean, I also think there's been a change in terms of like the approach to this stuff. I just remember, there was opposition to recruiting in places like, we're in California where you have Code Pink and stuff like that. But where I'm from, man, none of that shit existed. I mean, like I said, the most aggressive anti-recruiting thing they did in Bloomington, which is, like I said, one of the more left-leaning towns in Indiana, was to make it so that, you couldn't be in uniform and that they had to have school personnel with them. But my God, man, like I definitely think that the tide has turned in the sense that there's just more people who are sort of like, the facts are out there better in a way.
Well,
not just the facts about like the facts. Okay, the facts of the war being a disaster and war crimes, but also the facts of how the military treats people, how the military treats people who wind up with, mental or physical injuries. That stuff's more commonly known. And it felt like a long time ago, you kind of had to go digging to find that stuff. And now that to me seems to be a much more prominent part, I suppose, or aspect to the fight against recruitment. And so in that regard, I mean, here's the thing, right? Like, most recruiters aren't volunteers, so I get it. Like, it's a shit job, but also I hope deep down that recruiters who are being foiled by this shit are also just sort of like, whatever, it's not my fault if they don't want to join. I don't know if it works that way. I imagine it doesn't work that way at all and they get punished for it. But in the grand scheme of things, like, everybody that I know who was a recruiter got popped on recruiting duty. Like, they just came down on orders. So in a way, I'm less, I feel bad in the sense that I'm sure it sucks, but also I hope that they're not, how do we phrase this?
They're not taking it personally.
I hope that they're not taking it personally because, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, surely they must know how bullshit the Army is too.
Well, and that's...
if you're a recruiter and you're into being in the Army, like...
you have to be. Like, and here's the thing. So for those of you who are not really aware of the enlisted promotion, when you're active duty, when you hit E6, which is staff sergeant, and you want to make that E7, and depending on the job that you have, like, because I know public affairs people, like, once you hit a certain rank, it gets real thin about like where you can continue on. If you want to stay in the Army, you got to either go become a drill sergeant or you got to go do a recruitment. And some people like. And it's one way or the other. Which way Western soldier will you go? I've known people to go, either way. And, there's other things, there's other schools and whatnot. But I know that recruitment and drill sergeant school are two of the big ones that you can do to get your, 7, your 8, and kind of continue on from there. And yeah, you have to like if you've ever been, I don't know if any of you who listening have ever been in a recruiting office. It's been a while since I've been in one, but you are constantly surrounded by the propaganda, and you have to do it yourself, and you cannot sell, as I've talked about with propaganda. Propaganda works because the person selling it to you believes in it themselves. They have fallen for the propaganda themselves already. So if you're a recruiter, if you just like, I want to go do recruiting duty, you've really got to be up the Army's ass. So, and that's why like recruiters kind of seem a little off, because they have to be, whether they chose to do that, to go that route or not, to do the job properly, and to get a good NCOER and good evaluations and get all these good, get your accolades, so you can get your 7, you can get your E8. You've got to believe the bullshit, and you've got to be hard into the bullshit. And recruiters now, I mean, it seems like they don't go for the patriotism. If it's patriotism, you've already signed up. They have to be like, don't you want the school? Don't you want the medical? Don't you want 30 days of paid vacation every year? Which is all phenomenal. It's all great stuff. and everybody should have that in general. But like we say, the Army's the only one that'll offer it to you at the age of 18, fresh out of high school. So that's what they have to do. They have to, they. I don't know where the whole "my recruiter lied to me" thing came from, because you were dumb enough to sign up, and I don't remember any recruiter ever telling me anything other than it sucks out there. It's easier here. And I know how that sounds, but really being in the military is incredibly easy. It's very easy, especially if you have the ability to just switch your brain off for a couple of years. If you can switch your brain off as like an E1 through an E3, you're golden. You'll be the perfect soldier. Just like, the tells you how high to jump and you ask how high. It tells you to jump, you ask how high. It's incredibly easy. So this is I'm with you, Nate. I do feel sorry for them somewhat, but also, like I said, the effective ones are really smelling their own bullshit, and I don't know if there's a like they start getting that, and it's like, look, I'm not going to recruit this person, so there's no point to it. It's a sales job. Being a recruiter is a sales job. Somebody comes in and is just like, hey, what about my lay? All right. Fucking get that guy out of here. We're not going to recruit him. Who else is there? Here's a guy asking about what it's like to be a sapper. Let me tell you. Let me put my arm around you, buddy, and we'll talk about this. But Nate, I think another place where they fucked up is going to the internet, because people face to face are not gigantic assholes. Like, on the whole, you and I will be complete assholes on Twitter all day long. But like face to face with most of these people, I'm not gonna, at no point in time am I going to like quote tweet Hillary Clinton in real life and be like, check this fucking shit out. Like, but you'll do that online because it's the internet and it doesn't matter. So when the military is trying to recruit on the internet, on Twitch, which is full of a bunch of like Zoomers and young millennials, you're just gonna get a bunch of shitheads, and you get what you deserve. So shout out to all of the real warriors out there, asking a guy who's playing Fortnite, who's doing a Fortnite dance, and asking him about the massacre of Haditha.
Well, also something I'd say too, that I've talked about this with Cynthia a bunch, and I feel like it bears mention, is that what the military offers is what used to be more standard in terms of the benefits that a good job, like a good union job, would give you. And those benefits have become so rare in the modern world as the economy neoliberalized. And as such, the idea of what you're describing, you could be a high school graduate or a GED holder and get a job that gives you 30 paid days vacation a year, completely free medical and dental for you and your whole family. Free travel on government aircraft when you're on leave if you want to go space A. All these educational benefits to include, like, especially with the modern GI Bill, you have the ability to go to state schools and basically pay nothing for college. Go through and get paid your housing stipend while you're in school, get a stipend for your books, and have your tuition completely covered, depending on where you're going to school. And those benefits are incredible. But I think the thing here is some of the pushback that I've seen levied against Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and against leftists who are anti-military recruiting is, no, don't shut down the one venue that allows people social mobility in America. And I feel like that's such a dark statement to make, because, none of that really even denies the horror stories that we've seen reported. It doesn't say that critique doesn't address, you could have a lifetime of physical and psychological injury from this. You could find yourself participating in things that you didn't think human beings could do. You could die. You could be disfigured. You could lose your sight. You could lose your hearing. You could lose limbs. You could see friends die. You could be sexually assaulted by someone in your chain of command and have your chain of command punish you for being sexually assaulted. You can be, denied mental health care and then punished for trying to seek out mental health care. You can have a family emergency and the military forbids you from doing anything about your family emergency. And so you can either let the family emergency play out, with no assistance, or you can then get punished for basically going AWOL to solve the problem. Like, there are so many things that, they don't tell you about when you're looking at the contract or they're trying to recruit you. But the idea that people's complaint would be, well, this does provide some great social welfare benefits, you shouldn't get rid of it, or you shouldn't discourage it despite all of this horror. I think that is very telling in its own right, because it kind of reveals that people, they don't think that it's a problem that those benefits aren't accessible to people outside of the military, for people of, completing mandated education. They think that those benefits are things you get for being a smart hedge fund guy, and they just need to offer them for the military so that people are willing to get killed in Iraq and Afghanistan. You know what I mean? Like, it's a very dim view of what the social contract actually is. And in that regard, I feel like it's a weird kind of short-term thinking, and it's a failure to engage with the problems at large in America, because not everybody can join the military. That's the thing, right? Not only do most people not want to join the military, many people can't join the military. Many people can't because of disabilities. Many people can't because of conditions like epilepsy. Many people can't because maybe they can't make weight to enlist, or maybe they, have some kind of a psychological condition that doesn't stop them from living a full life, that doesn't stop them from deserving care and the ability to, to lead a healthy life without being basically treated like a vermin infestation. And they can't join the military. So what you're basically saying is, by that notion of like, well, here's this ladder to achieve social mobility by becoming part of the military, and that's the only place where we're going to offer benefits like this in the entirety of our, social system. Oh, and by the way, the disabled are just completely a priori excluded from this. So that's basically, you in a roundabout way, saying that the disabled deserve to be poor. That's to say that the people, I mean, like, one of the things that I would talk about too, there's that whole Heritage Foundation study about saying that people who join the military aren't poor. And I think a point that I would make in that is that there is some truth to that, in the sense that what counts as middle class isn't upper middle class, gated community suburbs. What counts as middle class in America, when you think about how overall poor Americans actually are, what counts as middle class are people who, by and large, by the time they graduate from high school, aren't going to have the physical and, let's say, legal markers of poverty that people who are not middle class, who are in the poorest classes, have. And by that, I mean, to enlist in the military, there's certain things that you cannot have. If you've got really bad teeth problems, if you're overweight, if you have significant injuries from things, if you aren't able to meet the physical standards, as set out in the beginning before you go to MEPS, if you have a criminal record, if you live in a community where from the age of 11 onwards, the cops basically harass you anytime they see you on the street and can arrest you on bullshit charges. By the time that you're old enough to enlist, which is 17 with parental permission or 18 on your own, you might have a criminal record for bullshit that prevents you from joining the military. Similarly, like if you grew up with, when you think about some of the psychological effects of people growing up in homes that are, strongly affected by poverty, if you have some of the issues with regard to behavioral problems that are often seen, in these situations, that might have marked your school record, and with the school to prison pipeline, that might have affected your ability to have a normal job because you already have a criminal record. So the point I'm trying to make in this is that, the absolute poorest people, or the people in the worst circumstances in America, statistically speaking, are going to have a much harder time joining the military than someone from, let's say, a downwardly mobile middle class family. You know what I mean by that? Like, which is to say, somebody from, I don't know, like Rayford, North Carolina, who grows up in a family where their parents own a home, but their parents don't earn more than, say, $30,000 a year. that's still middle class by the standards of what constitute what when you think about what people in actual poverty in America live.
Yeah, I wrote
And
something.
if somebody like that joins the military, chances are good they can move up if they don't get hurt or sick or fucked up or, psychologically damaged by the experience. But if that's the only route to material advancement in the American economy, then what that basically creates is what we just said previously. You are, by design almost, but certainly in practice, excluded from that ability to take advantage of the largesse that comes as a reward for, renting your body and soul to the military. You are excluded from that if you are too poor, or if you're disabled, or if you have anything that disqualifies you from military service. And so to say that this is like this unambiguously good thing that helps foster social mobility, which is an argument I have seen liberals make, I don't think maybe they're cognizant, but it strikes me that they're not particularly aware of how empty and how cruel of a pronouncement that is.
Yeah, the Heritage Foundation, I wrote something about that because that whole study was such a propaganda boon for like both sides of the aisle. Because
the methodology is kind of weird. I've seen some takes on it, but ultimately, I think that it does make a point. But the point is that a lot of people have a very distorted impression of what constitutes middle class in America.
Yes, the thing, if you haven't seen it, it basically lays out the people who join the military. They join from this zip code, and the median income from that zip code is X. And so it's just a very roundabout way of saying, okay, so this is the, just based on this recruit came from this zip code, and this zip code has a median income of this. Let's, gather that information from, thousands of recruits, and then that's where we get our information. And the Heritage Foundation, they gathered all this info and then they put their own meaning to it, but other people pick it up and put their own meaning to it. But literally, it's just that. And I wrote something about it, and Nate, I'll send it to you. You can put it in the show notes about how it's just a goofy propaganda thing that can be used by anything because numbers can mean whatever. They're like middle class, $60,000. But what does that mean for somebody who lives in the heart of Brooklyn? What is $60,000 a year?
A family making $60,000 in New York City, if both parents are working, is ostensibly a family with both parents on minimum wage.
Yeah. And
whereas the family making $60,000 a year in where I'm from, in northern central Indiana, you could be quite well off. And obviously, depending on how long you've been making incomes along those lines, you might own a home and have home equity and all this stuff. So in a way, I think that I agree with your take that it kind of provides an argument for both sides. But I think that a lot of people in America who are from lower middle class or downwardly mobile middle class families don't want to admit that they're middle class. And a lot of people who hate the military, who are from middle class to upper middle class families, I think have a tendency to assume that everyone who joins the military is the white kid from their high school graduating class who wanted to kill people. And I think that both takes miss the point. And the point is not to defend the military. It's just more that I think it's a little bit more complicated than that. And I think it misunderstands class in America.
I got to say, one of my favorite juxtapositions of leftist theory is that people who join the military are either these middle-class white kids who want to kill brown people, or they're just, poor kids and it's called the poverty draft. And it's the only thing they can do is join the military to have any kind of hope in this world. It's I think you're really you're really taking away a lot of agency from either one of those. And those are both straw men. And I'm not saying that either of those don't exist, but also that's not your two types of recruit. Jesus fucking Christ. Everybody, calm down.
There was a guy that I knew years ago who made this comment that he said that, I'll tell the story. I had a sergeant major who was a very, very smart guy, and he made sergeant major very young. He had spent most of his career in Ranger Regiment, and he was being the command sergeant major of an of a regular airborne infantry battalion, so he could then go back and, and I'm sure he did at this point. He was super squared away. Go back and be the sergeant major of a ranger battalion. And one of the points that he made was, people talk a lot about enlisting for patriotic reasons. He was pretty sanguine about a lot of the stuff. He definitely really hated the attitude that a lot of people have about, I enlisted and thus I'm part of the, 1% who serve. And so everyone should suck my dick. Like, he was very, very aggressively against that attitude and that sort of Praetorian worldview. But one of the points he said is that plenty of people enlist for patriotism reasons. They are E7s who are enlisting to go in-def. But most people who join when they're 18 are joining either because it's a job or because it's something interesting to do, because what they have in front of them isn't interesting to them, and it sounds like an option either because of learning a skill or because it sounds cool if you're going to be a combat arms guy. And most people who re-enlist after that are re-enlisting because either they like their job or because they have a family now, and they're trying to maintain the quality of life that exists when you're in the military because of the sort of middle-class welfare state that does exist when you're in the military for all of its problems. I mean, let's be honest, there are things about it that suck really bad, but there are also things about it that are so, if you sat somebody down who didn't know anything about the US military and talked to them about some of those benefits, they'd be like, this is so unbelievably generous, I can't believe it exists. When you talk about subsidized childcare, free housing for you and your family, free medical for you and your family, all the vacation days we discussed previously, the educational benefits for you and your family. There was a time when they did tuition assistance for spouses too, and it was really generous. Like, if I remember correctly, there was a time when they opened up tuition assistance to spouses, and they wound up being on the hook for like billions of dollars of tuition because so many people's dependents wanted to use it, which, I mean, it was their right. That was what was promised them. You have free recreation centers, you have free gyms, you have free camp things, or very, very low-cost camp things for kids. You have schools primarily on post up through the middle school level. You have all these unbelievable things you can do. You can stay in and you can transfer your GI Bill benefits to your kids or to your spouse. If you're disabled or you're a combat veteran, in some states you can get exemptions from tuition in in-state schools for your kids. Like, these benefits are so gargantuan, particularly in the face of the withering away of any kind of commensurate level of benefits for the average American worker. So that quality of life, for all of the troubles that come along with being in the military, that quality of life for your family is so unbeatable in the outside world that it serves as a huge retention tool. And so, I mean, people, when you press them, like, if they're on the spot, are just gonna be like, I wanted to serve my country. I love the fucking flag. I want to fuck eagles all day. But the truth of the matter is that most people I think about my soldiers when I was a lieutenant, and most of them had gone to college and just not liked it. Like, very few of them enlisted straight out of high school. There were some, but most of them were 20, 21. They had gone to a year or two of college. They hadn't liked it, or they had gone to trade school, or they had done some kind of, post-high school job, and they decided to do something else, and it was interesting. It was something different. And the real, like, hardcore, hard-charging patriot people, those are folks who have already kind of, in a way, that's like an emotional, retroactive justification for the last 15 or 20 years of your life being spent this way, if that makes sense. Because I didn't join because I was like, hell yeah. I mean, I guess in a sense I felt like a sense of obligation post 9/11, which was dispelled when I actually saw what we do in real life. But there also was, for me, it was like, it seemed like it was something I should do. It seemed like it was important. I was obligatory, like, because of what I thought was a societal need, and also because it was interesting. I thought it was going to be interesting.
Yeah, that's kind of where it comes down to with me. And also,
I had my hopes dispelled. Don't get me wrong. All of that turned out to be bullshit, but I definitely believed it at the time. I thought that an individual who wants to do the right thing can make the difference in a situation like that, and B, that the positives of what I experienced were going to outweigh the negatives in terms of, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, whatever. I thought that I was going to come out of it sort of knowing the world better. And instead, I think it just made me a lot more cynical. And it certainly made me it makes living in the regular world a little bit harder.
Despite what all the angry Maoists online would tell you, not everybody was woke at 18, and some of us needed to have a few life experiences before we're like, oh, okay, no, this is actually shitty, and I don't want to do this.
Well, I think that's a good point, actually, Francis, because I think that one of the things that we have, I mean, I absolutely believe in class-based analysis of politics. I don't say class only, but I think that class is very important to consider. I also think that one of the things that people, I think, should take into consideration is that not everybody's a lost cause and not everybody has to get written off because of stuff that they did or that they thought when they were younger. I think most people, if they're being honest with themselves, will admit that they had to be educated and had to kind of come to terms with things, and that the stuff that they thought was one way when they were younger, they've since updated their opinions based on their life experience. And I think that when we look at, people online who are learning, who have dumbass opinions that they've put out there, you do feel a little bit differently about it when it's an 18-year-old or a 19-year-old versus when it's like a 40-year-old. And I think in the same way, we try to be, both firm and also understanding when it comes to people like that at that age. And I think that the thing that I wish, I can't imagine at this point that someone who listens to the show because they fucking hate you and me and they want to own us has gotten this far. But I would say that if you are, or if you know somebody, the big thing I would say is that a lot of people who sign up for the military, once you've signed up, it's almost impossible to get out. It's very challenging. And the military does a really good job of scaring the shit out of you and making you think that if you do go the route of going CO or going AWOL, that, you'll go to prison for the rest of your life and you'll never even be able to work in McDonald's. Which is not true, but obviously there are significant impediments to your ability to function in society that come along with having another than honorable or dishonorable discharge. But the point being here that a lot of people, if you grow up in America, you have to seek out stuff to be informed on things, to not just through osmosis absorb the argument that we're always fighting for good and we're fighting for peace, if such a thing were possible. And I think that for me, all of the kind of intellectual exercises I could go through to do, apologia for the military about what I thought was actually, in the end, we all want to do good. And it's just, some bad people have made some bad mistakes. I couldn't keep making those justifications when I saw it for myself. When I saw us always do the wrong thing or us always do the cowardly thing when it came to actually helping people in situations where, vulnerable people were exposed to danger that weren't, our fellow troops, but rather vulnerable people in countries that we were operating in or occupying. And so I wasn't able to make that justification to myself anymore. And I realized that a lot of things people were saying were correct. That doesn't mean that I appreciate folks telling me to kill myself, but also I think some of the more humane arguments people were making, which was basically there's nothing you can do as an individual to stop this system that's not built to do good things. All you're going to do is destroy yourself if you try to do that, save yourself from it and don't do it. They were right. And I wish I'd listened. And I don't know if it's a failure of communication that I didn't listen back in 2004 when I joined, when I was 19. I hope that more people now listen to people like you and me and other veterans and other people who resisted recruiting, so that they can understand that it's better, in my opinion, to trust us, to trust the people telling you not to, than it is to go and see it for yourself. But I understand that some people demand to see it for themselves, because I was one of them. And that's a question that I don't know how you disarm that, but also the thought crossed my mind that if I had someone in my life at that time, those let's say 17 to 20, who I really loved and respected, who tried to talk me out of it, I probably would have listened to them, because I was on the fence a bit.
For me, every once in a while I get people asking me, should I join? My knee-jerk reaction is always no. But sometimes, they'll want to talk a little bit more about it. I know one guy was talking about, I'd like to become JAG. or I want to join and become 25 series, which are the people who the S6, the people who fix the computers. I generally don't get people coming in to my mentions and being like, man, I just really want to be in the fucking infantry. Like the future infantry doesn't come to us. But what you do get is you get a lot of people who are like, I mean, I can do it, and I feel like it would help me, and I don't have a lot of other options. And the thing is, I will always still tell you no. But if you do go and join, you will also always have a place with us. Like, I'm not going to, we don't shun people for being in. We don't shun people for making those decisions. Like, if you go in and you're just like, I mean, I'm just doing the thing for 4 years and then I'm going to get my college and then I'm going to go. And, you don't turn into some right wing fucking shithead chud during that time, then great. Like, I'm friends with plenty of people who are still in the military. Maybe they don't 100% agree with me. I don't 100% agree with them, and this is that we disagree on a level that isn't like, some MAGA chud versus a Marxist. This is, hey, we're both soldiers. We're both, I lean more left than you do, and that's fine. And, you as long as you're willing to understand and admit and lean into the fact that the military has problems, not just with how we conduct ourselves overseas, but how we conduct ourselves here. With sexual assault, sexual harassment, with just the incredible violence that comes with being a soldier. Even a peacetime soldier is an incredibly violent person, because that is what we're trained to do. Like that is our job, is to be violent. But if you're going out to be a 25 Bravo, you're going to fix computers for the Army for 4 to 6 years, get a couple of certifications, and then go out into the real world and make some money. And you're just, you're telling me this at the age of 18. Like, I'm still going to tell you don't, but I'm also not going to shun you. And I think that's always going to be the biggest, like, to always have our arms open for the wayward children to come back to, because I get it. Like, I understand wanting to see it for yourself. I understand wanting to complete the challenge that is joining the military, because it is, like, basic training is a mental and physical challenge, and being in the Army is a mental and physical challenge, and it's an experience you will not find anywhere else. There's no other job that you can get that will do these things. So I get it, especially if you have a lot of family that's in the military, and the military has always been like one of those things that's been, if not glorified, then at least, spoken as like, oh, my time in the Army.
It's been normalized.
Yeah.
Or
it's
like
your
when you think about it, for me, my dad was in the Army. My mom was in the Army. All of my uncles, except for one, were in the Army. My grandfather on my dad's side was in the Army. My great-grandfather on my dad's side was in the Army. My grandfather on my mom's side was an American airman. My great-grandfather on my British side was in the British Army. My great-great-grandfather on my British side was in the British Army. Like, legitimately speaking, my brother and my cousins are the first generation of my family. Like, I'm the only one from that generation who joined. Hopefully none of us who have kids our kids will join the military. But I mean, that's so ingrained to the point where it's not really perceived as in a family like that as a huge departure. And people aren't, I mean, in my case, my parents never said you should. It was more like, well, that would be nice if you did, when I said that I was considering it. I wanted to join before 9/11 even, but like, I wanted to be a Navy officer because it sounded like the Navy would be sweet and I get to live on the beach a lot. You know what I mean? Like, I was just like, oh, Navy bases fucking rule. I want to join the Navy so I go to these sweet bases, And for a kid from Indiana who, like, his family can't afford to go on vacation, like, it's not as though, the thought hadn't crossed my mind there are ways to do this that don't involve being in the military, because, there's a reason why we never went and visited my mom's parents. Or my mom's relatives. There's a reason why we never went and visited our friends from when we lived in Germany. We couldn't fucking afford to fly a family of 4 internationally from Indiana. Like, we didn't have the money. And so in a way, the military just seemed to open up these horizons to me. But there are a lot of people that I trusted. I mean, there are people that I cared about who, like, don't do it. And I just thought I was smarter than them. And whoops, they were right. I was wrong.
Every 18-year-old man thinks that they've got it figured out, and that's the thing. No amount of convincing. There will never be any, like, my 37-year-old ass will never be able to stand before an 18-year-old and say, here's what you should do. Don't take up smoking. Don't drink excessively. Go to school for something that actually interests you. make friends with people that interest you. Don't just stick your dick in anything that stands still long enough. And you can impart a million life lessons, because every 18-year-old has a million life lessons imparted on them by the people who are older and who have gone through these experiences. And every 18-year-old is still, like, 9 times out of 10 going to go and make all the same fuck ups, because that's how you learn. And that's why as I said, our arms are always open to the people who join, even if you join at the age of 18, and for whatever excuse you give yourself. Like, I a lot of times with young people in their early 20s, like I said, I'm 37, you're what, 35? We're experienced. We've been around the block, and we've also been in the military. And while we can tell you all these things, you're still going to go, every 18 to 22-year-old is still going to go out and they're going to do some fucked up stuff, which is why I never like hate 18-year-olds. Like, there's nothing that a 20-year-old is going to say to me that's going to make me be like, I hate this person, because everybody at the age of 20 versus the age of 35 is different. And it's like, it's like being mad at your grade school bully. Like, if I was still mad at a grade school bully, my wife brings this up every once in a while, like people who are like still mad at people who are mean to them in like the 7th grade. It's like, you're literally mad at a child. You're angry at a child that doesn't exist anymore. That person might be fine now. They might be an asshole, but they might be fine also. Like, it could be very well, like, just some normal things. It's, bullies happen. And I believe the same thing with 18-year-olds to 22-year-olds. Once you hit like 26, you should start having a handle on things. But if you're 21 and you're just a complete fuck up, and you're like, I'm gonna join the fucking Marine Corps and go be all that I can be, it's like, okay, we'll see how you are in 4 years, and we'll make a judgment there. But other than that, the rest of you, once you hit 26 and start kind of moving up from there, if you don't have at least like some kind of shit figured out, then you're probably not going to. So, which doesn't necessarily, like, don't get me wrong, I didn't have my first real job till I was 30. So, but at least my politics were well on their way.
Well, speaking of stuff that forms you as a young person, you and Joe Kasabian did a bonus episode on the topic of young Indiana Jones. And you made Joe, who's slightly younger than us, watch that show. So I'm going to roll some footage from that bonus. And folks, if you're interested in subscribing, this will be available at the $3 level on the Patreon. So I will play some of that right now.
The amount of people that they lost is fucking insane.
We're going to save those people by killing 1 million of our own.
Yeah, we're going to drown them in our blood. Sir, could we not? That sounds bad. I don't like my odds here.
So they get taken captive, and this is the split in the episodes. So the first episode, the first 45 minutes is the Somme offensive, and meeting British poets out in the middle of nowhere while getting drunk, and then getting taken captured. So the back half of this is the jailbreaks. So he gets put into a German prison camp, and it's one of those like small, like in the middle of nowhere kind of ones where you've got some bunkers, double barbed wire, machine gun towers, whatnot. If you've ever watched the movie Stalag 17, it's basically set up just like that.
Yeah.
Stalag 17 is a World War II movie, obviously, but like if you need to create like a quick POW camp, this would be how you do it. So, so first, in prison for like less than 12 hours and already trying to tunnel his way out. Now it is important to, I guess, backtrace. He meets one of his buddies, like when they're all milling about and, getting ready to get processed. One of his buddies, who's Belgian, that found a couple of French army officer coats and was just like, hey, let's just pretend to be French officers. And he's just like, we can't do, like, totally. And this is another non-Indiana Jones moment, because he's just like, we can't do that. We'll get shot. What if they wake up, man? And he's like, they won't be waking up. Like they're fucking dead. Fuck him. It's like, whoa, what if we get caught doing this though? And he's like, fuck. It's like, nut up, dude. You're French. Just pretend to be French and shut up.
Indy, shut up. I'm trying to get a discount at Golden Corral.
Right. So they pretend to be French officers. Now, when they show up to the prison camp, they find out that a tunnel has already mostly been built to escape. So they are enlisted to help out with the escape plan. The problem is they can't go slow anymore because they don't have any more struts to hold up the tunnel. So they're like, we have to dig the last chunk of it as fast as we can and get out. Jones is like the last one out of the tunnel, so he's the first one to get recaptured. And so they're standing in front of the commandant. People are getting sentenced to 30 days in isolation, which I guess are these little boxes out in the heat and the sun and everything. And he's like, oh, don't worry, Commandant. I'm not going to tunnel my way out of isolation. It's like, no, you're going to Dusterstaff, which is apparently a prison that was built, it's basically an old castle built on granite and surrounded by a lake that they're like, no, this is where we put all of our troublemaker POWs. Now, I was surprised because these POW camps looked really nice.
Yeah.
And if I had I know, Joe, I know that our law of war and prisoner of war things say that if you or I in the military were taken captured, we should do everything we can to resist and break out. But if I showed up at Dusterstaff and saw the nice airy open places they had for classes, they have classes going on. They're earning their college degrees in there. It's open. It seems like you have a lot of free time. It looked like they're all reading books. There's a lot of people. It's like it didn't seem like a bad place to ride out the war, especially after I've survived Flanders and the Somme.
Right.
You go through the Somme with a division of soldiers and you're one of 14 to survive and you're just like, man, I can't wait to go back and just do a bunch more fucking war. You're crazy. And at no time, I'm glad they didn't do hey, what if Indiana Jones had PTSD? But let's be honest, he would definitely have PTSD after all that shit.
Indiana Jones and the journey through family court. It's one of the things that's interesting is it shows how nice and clean these all are, and it kind of tries to gloss over the fact that World War I, like most wars, more people died of disease than combat. And Germany was going through horrific blockades and shortages of food and everything. So they'd be a little bit hungrier, but whatever.
Yeah, it just reminds me of your Andersonville episode.
Right.
And also when where I'm at in St. Louis, we're next to Alton, Illinois. Alton is famously one of the most haunted cities because there used to be a Confederate penitentiary there, and obviously, like you said, the Confederate military was not supplying their POW camps at all. So people were just constantly dying of starvation and disease and shit there. And that's exactly what World War I would have been, is the exact same fucking thing. Is look, I can't eat. What the fuck do you think you're gonna eat?
It was less of a malice thing, especially for since he was pretending to be an officer. And officers were treated significantly better, especially because the Germans pride themselves on Prussian honor and dumb shit like that back then. But yeah, everybody was fucking starving. They had those called the turnip winter in Germany, where tens of thousands of people starved to death because they were eating nothing but turnips. So I'm willing to bet that the castle would be so great, but I don't know.
Yeah. Well, so once he's brought in, he's still going under the French. He tried to get out of it, but no, I'm not the French guy. Please don't send me to Dusseldorf. I'm Corporal Defense, and the commandant's like, no, you're going. So he has to stick with the French identity, Pierre LeBlanc, and he starts meeting all sorts of other soldiers from all over the place. He gets made as an American, because and the whole thing, they're always talking in English. they have accents, like the British people have British accents, but the conversation that he has with the tall, skinny British guy that he ends up befriending, the guy's like, yeah, I can tell. I knew you weren't French because he knew a bunch of Americans that spoke French fluently, but not perfectly, and he could pick out things that made him be like, no, this guy's an American, because they wanted to make sure that he wasn't a spy, and he's like, no, he's not a German spy, he's an American. So you have, and he's like, I fooled a lot of Frenchmen. I've fooled a lot of people with my French. And you have to assume this entire time they're speaking probably in like 3 or 4 different languages.
Yeah.
But they're like, look, we know your dumbasses only know one language, so we're just going to talk in that one. So then we get to meet the Russians. Boy, howdy. During the scene where where Jones meets all the officers, packages are delivered. 2 of the people in this class are Russian officers. I guess this is 1916, I suppose. So this is pre-revolution. But and look, I know that we can only go so far with historic facts in something like this, but were they always this bumbling back then?
I mean, they didn't have a great reputation in World War I. They got fucking owned, but and I'm pretty sure they're both officers, which, I mean, the Tsarist officer corps was notoriously incompetent and terrible at their job, with the exception of, like, Bruce Siloff. That's pretty much it. But I'm willing to bet they also would not attempt to lasso a building with homemade rope. So I don't know. I don't know, man.
Yeah. Their big escape plan is they've been saving the string from all the packages, and they made a rope, and they want Indiana Jones because they're like, oh, they're asking him if he's a cowboy, because he's American, and it's like, you're American movies, the Americans are cowboys, so you must be a cowboy. He's like, well, I can ride a horse. They're like, he's a cowboy. Can you lasso something? And he's like, yeah, I can. And when he starts to he goes back, he's like, yeah, I'll do it. I'll help you out. And he's like, we'll come back tonight. And the one guy's just like, you've been talking to the fucking Russians, haven't you? He's like, they wanted me to help them build an airplane. Don't talk to them. They're insane. And Jones is just like, okay, I won't. And so he goes back that night and he's like, dudes, I'm not going to go with you. And they're like, oh, we know what everybody says. Oh, that we're crazy. Oh, well, look, all you have to do is rope that thing, and then we'll just go across it, and then we'll slide down and we'll go to freedom. And like, that's all it takes for Indiana Jones to be like, yeah, all right, that's fine, I suppose.
I'll set you guys up to die. This is cool.
Well, if they had gone one at a time, maybe it would have worked. But they argued about it, and they're like, well, we're both going to go at the same time. They try to go across it in like the dumbest way. Like, if you're ever going to cross anything on a rope, at the most you should have your hands and legs on the rope,
yes,
sliding yourself. But they do that thing where they're just like dangling, like, and then trying to slide along. Like, no, man, come on, you're gonna die. They were gonna die anyway because they were both fat and weak.
What do you mean I can't RPG character my way across this rope? But I'm a 250-pound soft-ass Russian officer that's been in camp forever? No.
All right, everybody, as always, thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting us in whatever way that you do, whether it be on the Patreon, whether it be sharing our podcast, whether it be talking about us amongst yourselves and your peers, and just being like, hey, maybe we don't have to keep doing war. Maybe 20 years of a losing war is a bad thing. And your buddies say, I never thought about it that way. Thank you for making those conversations happen. You can follow me at Army Strang, follow Nate at In These Deserts, follow the podcast at Hell of a Way. We're on Facebook, we're on YouTube. We have a website, hellofawaytodie.com, that has writings. It has a shop. It's got everything that you could ever hope for. So, as always, we appreciate you being listeners. We appreciate what you do. And Nate, we'll talk to you next week.